Martha Lucy Touchstone Tuffli,
And where are you from?
Los Angeles,
How old are you?
91. My mother is Catherine Craig Touchstone. My father was William Weatherford Touchstone. My grandparents on my father's side is James Nathaniel Touchstone and Lucy Smith Touchstone. My mother's parents were Elizabeth Graham Craig and Will Craig. I didn't know any of my grandparents. They all passed away before I was born. Dad was November 4th, 1898, and Mother was January 19th, 1899. Mother was a homemaker, and Dad was a real estate developer. He developed the first shopping center in California, at least Southern California. There were two of us. I was the youngest.
What was your childhood like?
It was wonderful. It was very carefree. Part of it was during World War II, and I can remember the fascination of the overhead cleat lights at night when they were looking for enemy planes or balloons or such, and I'd crawl out in the window box outside. We'd all be blacked out. We didn't have any lights on, but then I could go sit in the window box and watch the lights of the sky go on. And we had stirrup pups. My father was a block warden, and he would have to patrol the block to make sure it was all dark. And if there was a bomb dropped or something, we all had stirrup pumps that you pump the water up in and then spray the fire. And Don didn't tell you, unfortunately, some naughty things he did with stirrup pumps with his friends. But it was a horrible war, but not where we lived. We were blessed. We had ration tickets, stamps for gasoline, for sugar, for coffee, food, most everything. We had to save our aluminum tinfoil from our gum wrappers. We bought them in big balls and then turn them in, and they'd be used somehow for munitions. And we say, if we could get bacon, we'd save the bacon fat. That would go in and be used for munitions during the war effort. So it was a very important time growing up that we had that experience. I can remember being a little ashamed of myself. During the war, again, my father bought a farm in Chino, California, and I was about 10, 11, 12, and getting very lazy, and I did nothing to help him. And now, whether it was plucking the chickens when he would take one from not the herd of chickens, whatever, flock, and we fixed it for dinner. I was too lazy, and it embarrasses me now. I don't know if that's what you were asking, but it's what came to mind.
It's a memory.
Well, I learned in my later years to be more responsible, as Don said, to be honest, to trust in my faith in Jesus Christ, and to be a good girl. Honestly, we could go out and play till dark. We had to be alone by dark. I learned to ride my bicycle all the way around the block, which is a pretty big block. I'd ride my flexi flyer down the driveway onto the grass by the street. That was exciting. It was such a big hill. Actually, it was a very small hill. It was big to me in those days. And we used to sit in the driveway and play jacks by the hour. By the hour. They were just fun, carefree days. Not much was required of me, and I appreciated that. But I spent a lot of time Hollywood Presbyterian Church, and I had a wonderful group of friends I grew up with there. I would take the bus, the Highland Avenue bus up to Hollywood Boulevard. You'd go up to Gower to church. You'd come home at night on the bus, and there was no fear then. It was all safe, and it was just a good experience. So I had lots of friendships, lots of dear friends, and it's hard to choose a most important one. Maybe my sister was my most important friend. I would say she was. Well, I went to 3rd Street School, as did Don. I went 1 year to John Burroughs Junior High School, and then 5 years to Marlboro School for Girls. And that was a turning point. I think I learned to study and be responsible there. I enjoyed the music program and sang with the a cappella choir. I learned I was terribly shy, and I've had to fight that all my life. I was asked to do a dance on stage by myself, a solo, and I did it, and the gym teacher, who was our dance teacher, kept yelling at me, "Smile, smile." I couldn't smile. I was so scared. I just couldn't smile. I learned then, actually, that I was a very shy person, and so that's been something I've dealt with.
What year did you graduate?
1949. I worked for my father. He had a real estate office down on 7th and Spring Street in Los Angeles. In those days, they had switchboards for the telephones and all sorts of plugs that you plugged in and out. And a call would come in from my Uncle Blake, who had a quick chipper. And I would make me so nervous that half the time I'd always unplug him at the wrong time. But anyway, I learned a lot about being on time and suffering through difficulties with a switchboard, that kind of thing. I don't even remember my first date. That was a long time ago, because I just loved being with him more than anything else. Still do. Well, it's a commitment. In our case, it's been a lifetime commitment in trying to do what is best for him or for our relationship, raising our family to be good Christian gals and raise good Christian families and be true to their spouses and good members of the community and of the country, being good patriotic Americans. There's a lot involved. Well, we lived together for 5 or 6 years before we got married. And I think it was getting to the point that I was thinking, well, either we've got to get married or I'm going to have to find somebody else, because I was only 20 years old, but it seemed quite old at that time. I don't know, I think we finally decided, well, let's set an age. It never was when marry me that I recall. It's just, well, let's set a date. Okay. It was a lovely wedding. It actually was the Beverly Hills Community Presbytery. I guess it was Presbyterian Church. And a lot of my friends had been married the year before, and they were pregnant. And so I really did not have a equal amount of right space to his 9 boobs, but I think I had about 4 or 5. So it looked a little odd, our unbalanced line, but it's all right. We got married. It was a lovely service. Our pastor did such a beautiful job. I still remember his message to us. So that's what counts.
What was his message, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I remember quoting from Ruth, "Whither thou willest, I will go. Thy people shall be my people, thy God shall be my God." And fortunately, my God is his God. It works very well. Next action. Oh my gosh, how am I going to tell Don? Oh my goodness. So it was a shock to both of us because we were such innocents. It's hard to believe I don't, but we were. And so it was just, okay, deep breath, guess what? Dad, he was very gracious about it. Of course, our eldest is Laura Craig, and she was born September 3rd, 1953. She is at the first, the oldest, the most responsible family-wise, as far as her sisters and her parents, because that's the way the first child always is. She's a good athlete. She went on a survival trip in college when she was about 19, I guess. How I ever allowed that to happen, I don't know, but she survived, so I'm grateful for that. She's a good Christian woman and has 4 wonderful children, and I think it's 12 or 13 grandchildren. That's a good bunch of our great-grandchildren. Our second daughter is Virginia. Virginia lived, and she was born June 22nd, 1956. And she has been our free spirit, artistic, has more talents that have never actually been developed. But she has been a joy to us, and she has 4 children. And one family has 3 darling grandchildren, and they live in Texas. And the youngest is Carol, born in June 23rd, 1961. And she was very shy as a child, but got to college and just blossomed, and has become very responsible. She has 6 grandchildren. She flies their airplane. She plays pickleball and mahjong and all the contemporary sports. It does very well. They're all good Christian girls, as are their husbands, and we're proud of all of them and love them all dearest. Well, I would agree that Africa was, with our family and also our Lake Powell trips we took. Early on, we took a 13-foot Boston whaler with our 2 older daughters. Carol was not old enough. And this was 1964, I think, when they put the plug in the bottom of Lake Powell. And we went with another family, the Judd Roberts family, and we stuffed our little whalers with our sleeping bags and gasoline and food. It went for about a week up the Colorado River as it was filling because the dam had just been closed. And that was a remarkable trip. We did it 2 more times after that. And then after the water had gotten to the very top, they let it down. Lake Powell had a bathtub ring around it where the high water mark was. And it was not quite the same. People had been there, and you'd walk up the rivers, and there would be someone left a sock here or something there. It just wasn't pure nature the way it had been. Well, my family has been my hobby and my passion, and Don was working so hard, there was kind of my responsibility to raise our daughters, and I took it very seriously. It was quite a challenge, and I think through that challenge, my faith developed more because I needed help. I just couldn't do it on my own. And of course, when he would come home at 7 or 8 at night, he would ruffle house, we called it. He would wrestle with them a little bit, and then they'd put him in and go to sleep. And then he wouldn't see him again for a whole day. So there was a lot of responsibility in the rest of raising children. But he was a good dad, and he was there Sundays, and he went to church Sundays, even though that was his only day off. And I really appreciated that, too. I don't know if I have a greatest accomplishment. Everything has come my way pretty nicely, and I do appreciate it. I'm not a very good cook, and in my older years, I've become a very bad cook. Terrible. But that makes it easier to buy already made food to eat. And I early on wanted to be a dancer. My early years, and my father said no. Choo-choos were truly fitting. I couldn't become a dancer. And so I think just being a good wife, a good citizen, and a good mother has been my accomplishment. But I would say I'm a Protestant. I'm a Christian. But I can flow very well between being a Methodist, a Presbyterian, covenant person, because my focus is on the Lord Jesus Christ, and I think He loves us regardless of which discipline we follow. It's pretty major. I think the time is going to come before too long that I will get to reunite with our families, and I believe that will happen. And that is, of course, all faith-driven. And to see our children and their families grow up to be faithful to the Lord is very important to me. It's sustaining me. I hope you can find a point in your life that you are comfortable with the Lord and feel you could rely on Him. Oh, I think it's been with our family. The most joyous times when Don and I are with the girls and with their husbands. I think our ranch has given us a lot of joy, and we have a great deal of fun over here, hiking and birding, a lot of wood that's dead and needs birding and that kind of thing. or to appreciate the moment, to be happy with where you are and what you have, and to just enjoy life right now. Don't wait till something that may never happen. Well, it was very sad how Laura had been bothered, and Don and I thought we were going to take Laura to Hawaii. This is when he was in the service. And just before he was to leave for Hawaii, he found out he was going to Korea. And that was very difficult for me. I prayed I wasn't a very good sport. It was very, very hard to adjust to. I thought, well, maybe it'll just be baby Laura and me. You know, something might happen to him in Korea or on the way over. So it was a great, joyful noise to be heard when I heard he had arranged. She made things happen, and he could serve his term in Japan rather than Korea. And then he made it happen that Laura and I can go and live it there in a Japanese house for a year, which was fantastic. Amazing. My mini kitty is a people person, as long as you're adult. She adopted us midway through her life. And she checked us out for maybe a week. And finally accepted food, although I told Don, don't feed her, she'll stay. Yeah, good cat. Okay, I was president of National Charity League, our chapter down here, and I found I could speak in public, and I could help run an organization with a lot of help from my board and all of that business, but that was a surprise to me. One of the regrets I have is that I did not accept another offer to be president of another organization that I really, really dreamed of. But it didn't come at a good time in my life, and so I didn't do it. So I guess finding that I could overcome shyness enough to speak my mind and have an idea and lead a group of ladies and have fun doing it.
Words of wisdom. What have you learned over your lifetime that you like to share with your younger generation?
Oh my goodness. Well, I do think it is to be honest, to have a strong faith, to be faithful to your spouse, and not to have to have a lot of anything. If you have your health and your friends and your husband, your family, you have it all age, and your country and freedom, that is essential too. To be with him, it's great fun to be with Don most of the time. And it inspires me to see our little grandchildren growing up and becoming responsible adults. All of that is our grandchildren, for sure. They're all. Our oldest grandson is 44 or something. He's Donna's my biggest motivation to keep going. I'm afraid it's not helping me cook any better, though. But I want to be up with him every morning and see him off and get going with my day and trying to have a productive day to talk about. Well, I think it was introduced to me. I did have one love before Don, but it didn't go anywhere, and I'm so bad at it. And I was so young when I met Don, so what was that first love? That was just... But our sisters introduced us, and he looked pretty good to me then, and I was just 15 or 16, so it walked in the front door. That's what it did. Well, it's be fully aware of what's going on and what's going on with our families, what's going on in our country, what's going on in his life. It's what's going on in other people's life is what makes it good for me.
Best tips for making marriages last?
I think a good one is to listen carefree. Try to be pleasant all the time, but to listen and to share. Enjoy each other. Well, I'd like to spend at least a week at the ranch, just out there doing fun things, not necessarily having to entertain anybody. Just even the two of us up there, we're always rushing up and rushing home. I'd like to spend a little time.
Quality quiet time.
A week or two, that's all.
I like that.